Hey everybody. In class we've been doing a lot of work with linear equations, and we've seen a lot of equations in slope-intercept form, and we've been graphing a lot of those equations. Tonight we're going to work on how do you actually write the equation of a line? How do we find those equations? Where do they come from? We know that a slope-intercept equation looks like this, right? Y equals mx plus b. And m we know is the slope, and b we know is the y-intercept. So if we know those two pieces of information about a line, we can write the equation pretty simply. For example A here, the slope is -2 and the y-intercept is 5, right? That means that m equals -2 and b equals 5. So our equation just becomes y equals -2x plus 5. Similar thing for example B. M equals 8, B equals -7. Now, in this instance, I'm going to write 8x, but instead of writing plus -7, I'm going to write -7, because that's a simpler way to write it, and it's just easier. In example C, M equals 3/4 and B equals -3. So same type of thing, except this time our slope is going to be a fraction. We're going to write it as a fraction. And we have -3 instead of plus -3. So pretty simple when we know what the slope is and we know what the y-intercept is, right? We just plug them in for m and b. When it gets a little trickier is when we don't automatically know that information. Here's an example of a line, and I want to be able to write the equation of this line, right? So we need to know m and we need to know b. So to find m, the slope, right, we can always find rise and run, or remember another way to think of that is delta y, the change in y, over the change in x. So I notice here from these 2 points, I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, down 4, so that's -4. That's my rise. And my run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. And since we're going to the right, that's positive. So my slope is -4 over 5. And if it's a fraction, we always want to make sure it's simplified. In this case, it is. That's the simplest version, -4 over 5. And our y-intercept here is where the line crosses the y-axis, right? Which is 1, 2, 3, 4, -4 on the y-axis. So that's our b. So to write this equation, we just write y equals -4 over 5x plus -4. And I'm just going to write -4. And there's the equation that gives us this line right here on the coordinate plane. All right, let's look at 2 examples that are a little weirder than the other ones. We're still looking for the same thing, though. We're looking for m and b, the slope and the y-intercept. So here, it tells us a function at 0 is equal to 5, right? When the input is 0, the output is 5. Same thing with this part. When the input is 4, the output is 17. F of 0 equals 5, f of 4 equals 17. We could write this actually as a set of coordinates. We could write 0, 5, right? That's the input and the output. And our other point is 4, 17. Input is 4, output is 17. Now we just need to find the slope. So to find delta y, or the change in y, remember we have to subtract the 2 y values, and to find delta x, we got to subtract the 2 x values. So it helps if we label these. Let's use a different color to label. Remember, every point has x and y, x and y. And since this is the first point, we'll just say x1, y1. Second point, x2, y2. So if we put these values in, we're going to have 17 minus 5 over 4 minus 0. 17 minus 5 gives us 12, and 4 minus 0 is 4. 12 divided by 4 equals 3. So that's our slope. Now our y-intercept is actually in this point right here. Remember, our y-intercept we get any time x is 0. Because if x is 0, this point is on the y-axis. That's at 5 on the y-axis. So we have m right here, and b equals 5. And here's m. So when we write our equation, we have y equals 3x plus 5. Very common mistake here is to put the y-intercept next to the x and put the slope by itself. So you just got to make sure slope is always the coefficient of the x and the y-intercept is the constant. All right, and then example F, our last one, we're going to do the same thing. Let's write these as coordinates. -3 is the x value, 6 is the output, and 0 is the x value, and -5 is the y value. So we're going to do our same thing. We're going to find the slope. We got x and y, x and y, x1, y1, x2, y2. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. -5 minus 6 is -11. 0 minus -3. This is a mistake a lot of people make. They forget to think about this as plus. 0 minus -3 is really the same as 0 plus 3, so that's +3. And I actually can't simplify this. So right here, that's my slope, right? Say equals m. And our y-intercept this time, we've got to look carefully. It's not 6, because when y is 6, x is -3. That's not on the y-axis. It's actually over here. When x is 0, y is -5. So in this case, b equals -5. And once we have that information, we have our m, we have our b, y equals m times x plus b. So 3 different examples, 3 different situations of finding the slope, the y-intercept, and writing the equation. That's all our notes for tonight. You can go ahead and submit your work through Canvas, and I will see you in class tomorrow. Have a good night.